Good evening to you and welcome to this week in Focus. My name is Mimi Mefo and today we will, on a weekly basis, and also today we'll be bringing two major headlines shaping Cameroon and the global diaspora, stories that you may have seen, heard, some of them you might have not heard them. But we'll not just be bringing the stories, we'll be making sure that we analyze them. We bring on board experts who have a point of view or two about some of the things that are happening in Cameroon and out of the national territory. And on the program tonight, we have Professor Maurice Kamto, who rallied thousands of Cameroonians in Paris and as well outlined his presidential vision. We'll be looking at what his key message was. Also, we'll be talking about a Cameroonian national that has been arrested by ICE in the United States of America over a troubling conviction, plus a tense diplomatic drama that ends in relief. Should we say it's actually a relief when one person, two people were arrested, one released, and the other is still in detention? I'm talking about an American couple. The wife is actually back in the US. The husband was a Cameroonian. He is still in detention. What is really the problem and what happened? We'll be talking about that shortly. And now the program begins. Like I said, it's all about news, analysis, and what is happening in Cameroon. Everything that is happening, even in the Cameroonian diaspora. Welcome on board. My name is Mimi Mefo, and this is this week in focus. We'll be talking about politics in Cameroon and out of the national territory, like I said. Well, we begin with our first story of the day, which is Professor Maurice Kamto, who gathered thousands during his rally that took place at the Place de la République in Paris, France. It was not the first time that he was meeting there, but this time around it was different. Let us have a feel of the atmosphere before we come back. Anyway, that was the atmosphere in Paris, France this weekend, precisely on Saturday, when Professor Maurice Kamto, leader of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement Party, the opposition in Cameroon, appeared before thousands of Cameroonians that have been waiting for several hours. He had a lot to say. He actually was talking about the presidential election that is upcoming. So much uncertainty in Cameroon at the moment. We don't even know which date the election will be holding. But he was there to address his followers, his sympathizers, and members of his party. His message, his message was very brief, that of unity, change, and a peaceful transfer of power. He also talked about no retribution for President Paul Biya and members of his government. So Kamto also pledged to restore dual nationality and promised to visit the Anglophone regions, that's the English-speaking Northwest and the Southwest regions, though notably he has not done so since the conflict began in 2016. But does this signal a new and genuine reset when it comes to politics in Cameroon, the conflict? Or could it be that we could also be seeing some changes when it comes to the situation of Cameroonians in the diaspora? We'll be having Kingsley Sheteh, who is an expert in political economy, is also a political analyst, a Cameroonian as well, on board to talk about the visit of Professor Maurice Kamto this weekend in Paris, France. Kingsley, thank you for joining us today. So my first question will be, what do you think about the speech of Professor Maurice Kamto? What aspect of his speech stood out for you?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Mimi, and it's really great that you picked that topic because it's really what is making news in Cameroon over the weekend. It was a really massive rally. He pulled a large crowd, and he must be commended for doing that. It's not easy to see a politician from the continent come to Europe and get such a huge crowd. But his messaging has been getting a lot of mixed reactions, especially I've been looking online. I've seen a lot of mixed reactions from Cameroonians. It's actually generated a lot of more questions than answers. For example, you did say in your introduction about him promising not to go after the Biya government. While that looks like it's a good offer because many think Biya is afraid of retribution. That's why he's staying on in power. So that could be an offer for him to let go and rest. But others are thinking, well, maybe he's going to just let the regime that has committed so many atrocities. There's been so many accusations of corruption. Maybe they're just going to have a clean slate. So it's got mixed reactions, but particularly, I'm sure you might be coming to that. What really caught attention.
But before we continue about that aspect, what is more important now to you as a Cameroonian? Getting the change that people want, or thinking about what could happen to the government that has been there for over 40 years and unable to deliver? And many Cameroonians unhappy.
I think every Cameroonian, right-thinking Cameroonian wants change. But it cannot also be a change that looks so much like there's no accountability. Because if we have change, now a change of power, but those who have disrupted or destroyed the system, they've been there for so many years, they are not held to account for their actions. It could be like we are actually just moving into a system of lack of accountability, and then we can create a culture of impunity. So that's where they say that balance, we need to strike that balance.
Yes. So Professor Maurice Kamto was also talking about promising peace and no retribution. You've already said that is quite a risky move. You are not sure about what this could mean for him and Cameroonians in general, whether it's something that people would embrace in the country. So we've got some reactions coming in. A lot of people are also reacting after he talked about the fact that he was going to visit the Anglophone regions of the country if he is elected president. That will be his first official move. What do you have to say about that? What are your thoughts about that statement from Professor Kamto?
Yeah, I think that is actually the one that really got me. First, like you did say in your intro, also he's not been to those two regions. I think he and another politician, I think Cabralibi, they've not been there. Yes, people make the argument, and rightly so, that there's insecurity. But Cameroonians are living in those regions. These are two high-profile people, and there are systems in place that can ensure that they have security. For example, if they reach out to the governor and officially tell the governor that they are coming into that territory, the governor is required by law to provide security. That's why we've seen opposition leaders like the leader of the SDF, Osi, was in the Anglophone regions. He's been to Boya, he's been to for a tour, he's been to Bamenda. Just last week he was in Bamenda, and I watched a clip of him, and there were security forces around him. So it's not.
Yeah, but we've had so many members of the Social Democratic Front Party being targeted in the Anglophone regions of Cameroon. Others arrested, others kidnapped. Sorry. And many others even brutalized and even killed by separatist leaders. So, if there was enough protection for opposition party members, would that be the case?
Yes. Well, that's the point where I said he is justified to say there's no security. However, there are two instances here. The people who are arrested, kidnapped, tortured, killed, are people who were probably living in those areas. They were there. They were not there on official high-profile missions. It's a different situation. I know you were thinking of, say, Senator Kemende. He lives there. That was his area. So he wasn't going there on a high-profile mission. So it's a very different situation. And I did look at MMI this today, and I saw a question there which really caught my attention. And one thing that was asked was, so will Kamto not campaign in these two regions? Does it mean he's ruled them out? And if it's about security, does it mean he will not also go to the northern regions? And that, for me, is the crucial thing. It means
I'm
he's
not sure
basically...
actually that's what it means. He will visit probably. We don't even know what the electoral calendar would be like. We don't even know when the election would hold in Cameroon. Probably he will visit, of course, the regions, because you cannot be talking about the conflict without knowing how the situation, the state of affairs in these regions are. I think his statement is, I will, after I am officially the president of the nation, I will make a visit to this region my priority, which is actually what he is saying. But
Yes,
I just
but now
wanted to add.
why should Anglophones believe that when in 8-9 years he has not made a courtesy visit? He's not done it. That's where the question is.
Members of the MRC have been there. Members of the MRC have visited the
Which
Anglophone
high-profile
region.
MRC member has been to the regions? Maybe you could
So many high-profile MRC members have been there. Even his party members live there in the Anglophone regions.
Yeah, but we are talking about a person who could be president. I mean, one of the biggest problems the Anglophone crisis has is the fact that President Biya has never been there. And now we have a new president who is coming up, and we are seeing the same pattern of Anglophones being treated as if they are just an afterthought. That's where there's a problem. I think for Anglophones, they need... I mean, I will give you a simple example. When Samuel Eto'o wanted to campaign for Faker Food, the crisis was worse than it is now. But he at least did something. I don't know how he managed it. He appeared in Limbe. Some people had mixed reactions about that. Some people raised questions. But he went to the Anglophone regions. Samuel Eto'o, it wasn't a political position, but he went to the Anglophone regions. Kamto has no excuse not to have visited Limbe, which is very safe. Oh boy, yeah, he has no excuse.
Well, let's see what the reactions. Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section, because your opinions also count. And do you believe that Kamto can unite Cameroon across the regional divides that we can see today?
Yeah, well, I think it's with the bad record that Biya has said, anyone can do a better job. And I think Professor Kamto has a good track record. Again, I would have to judge him based on what he has been doing. He's not really united his party, has he? He's not really united the MRC. If anything, he's actually really destroyed it, decimated the same party that he's been leading. So I am inclined to question if he could not keep his own party together. The MRC that we had in 2018 is not the same party today. Most of his people who were at his inner circle are all gone. Some of them are like Olivier Boubini-Sak is in prison. I don't even hear him mention him. Maybe I missed him yesterday, but I should think that that should be front center of most of what he says, because that was his spokesperson. So I have not seen Kamto as a leader of a political party uniting that party itself. So I am inclined to question his ability to actually unite Cameroon. Cameroon is very, very divided. Biya has done a great job of dividing Cameroon along tribal lines, along all manner of lines, and it would take a lot of craftsmanship, statesmanship to be able to do that. I am in a position where I question if Professor Kamto has shown enough to convince me that he has what it takes to actually unite Cameroonians. He needs to start with the MRSA.
And he mentioned dual nationality issue, that he was going to bring it, make sure that it is enforced. Can you tell me how you think about it as also a Cameroonian who is not in the country? What do you think about that aspect? It's been a huge debate in Cameroon, the aspect of dual nationality, and it's making it difficult for many Cameroonians to be able to invest, to do a lot of things back home because they feel like they do not belong. What do you think about that aspect of Kamto's speech?
Yeah, I think, it goes to the heart of him deciding to launch what I think was an official launch of his campaign in the diaspora. When I see those crowds, I have mixed feelings because the issue of dual nationality is not a complex issue. It's something that Biya could put, but it is what Biya uses to create the atmosphere he has created, where he can have this stranglehold on power. So the diaspora of every country has a powerful role to play. But for Cameroonians, their diaspora, if you look at that crowd that you saw, is the Cameroonian diaspora. It's a potential electorate. But in reality, many of them actually hold either French, British, Belgian, German nationalities, which means that if they have Cameroonian nationality, it will be illegal. So they might support Kamto, but they will be ineligible to vote. Then there are many who actually chose to maintain their Cameroonian nationalities, but then have permanent residence in these countries where they're staying. Those ones might be in a minority, because once you have permanent residence, in most cases, people will choose to go on and have the passport. But if, again, there's a category where people could have permanent residence, or they have residence, but they have it through the asylum system as refugees, they are not eligible to have Cameroonian passports. They have the UN 1951 Convention travel documents. These people, again, are people who are clamoring for change, but they are ineligible to vote. So you can see
so they cannot do much in terms of voting to effect that change.
Yes. So that is a tool.
Yes,
that's a tool that the regime of Paul Biya has used. He keeps away the issue of dual nationality, not because it causes any problems. He knows, and I think the members of his government know, that this is something that any country that is aspiring for growth would want to implement. But at this point, it is not to his advantage. So yes, that is a very solid point from Professor Kamto, and I hope that he or whoever becomes the next president of Cameroon can see that through.
Yeah, thank you for your responses with regards to Professor Maurice Kamto's outing in Paris, France. What are your thoughts about the things that he said, the huge mobilization? How can we translate that into real votes? Like when it comes to the election, we want outcome, and the outcome is in the ballot and voting the right person that will bring that change that Cameroonians want. What about his speech also with relation to the Anglophone crisis, dual nationality, and also the Biya regime? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Now we move on to something else, particularly in Maryland, where a U.S. immigration agents have arrested a Cameroonian national. His name is Clovis Fu Neba. And Clovis actually was convicted. He was arrested following a conviction for abducting a minor. Details remain unclear as to what really happened, but online speculations are suggesting that this may be related to an earlier arrest in 2019 involving a relationship with a teenager. Like I said, we don't really have a lot of details about this case, but he remains in ICE custody pending deportation hearings, and the case is stirring both outrage and confusion online. People have been talking, asking a lot of questions, and we have Kingsley here with us to also clear the air. I just wanted to find out from you, what are the key legal or reputational risks here, especially for Cameroonians who are in the diaspora?
Yeah, well, it's also an important story that you've picked up there, because there's a lot happening now with the Trump administration in power, and anti-immigrant sentiments growing across Europe. The UK, you see that growing a lot. In Germany, is the same thing with the far right gaining grounds. So there's a challenge, and I think what many people were struggling with was the issue of what they call in law double jeopardy, where someone cannot be tried twice for the same crime. So many Cameroonians were confused because they thought he had been arrested for a crime that he already served time for in 2019. But I think the difference here is that, and I did notice that was the part of the confusion, was that many people didn't realize that the ICE is actually the immigration and custom enforcement. So their arrest is more civil related and administrative. Now, for Cameroonians living in the diaspora, sadly, whether you like it or not, whether you have got nationality in these countries, these are things that are given to you and can be taken. So when you commit a crime as an American, a Native American, you have only one thing to deal with, is your criminal action. And you bear only criminal liability. If you go to jail, if you spend your 6 months, you come out, you go to this and you start moving on with your life. But if you are a foreign national and you commit certain crimes, then after you've served your sentence, now the civil action kicks in, and this is where immigration enforcement comes into play.
So why that demarcation when it comes to handling these cases?
Well, it's a sad reality for migrants that they're treated, they are not equal before the law. They can be this facade that being an immigrant in these countries, you are equal before the law. There's never equality before the law when you are an immigrant, especially if you're a first-generation migrant, because whether you like it or not, they will always see you. Once you fall foul of the law, they will always bring in the immigration aspect. If you spend time in jail in the UK, for example, if you spend more than 12 months in jail, automatically they issue a deportation order. So once you are leaving prison, the Home Secretary ensures that you will have to be deported. So you have to fight. Some people fight and succeed, some don't fight and succeed. So that is the problem I think Clovis is facing now, is that even though his crime happened in 2019 and he served time for the crime, he has now been arrested by ICE, and he is likely to be deported. We know the atmosphere in the USA now, so I think his chances are not so good.
So should we be concerned about how this affects perceptions of Cameroonians abroad?
Yeah, well, I think in a way it's an individual crime, and he bears individual liability. But you know how they use the same brush to paint everyone. It often looks like, because this case, I think it's good to also understand, based on what I read. I've not followed the details of the case myself, but I did read a bit, and it had to do with him having a relationship with a minor. Now, the way the law looks at it here, especially from this the extent that the girl was under 16. They see it as abduction, especially if he took the child without the knowledge of the parents and the child went to his house. He might not have known the age of the child, but that is not an excuse. So, but the first thing is that every Cameroonian who comes abroad needs to be cognizant of these issues. It's not as plain sailing as in Cameroon, where sometimes the law doesn't even care. Where we have a case where we heard not long ago of a minor, a 13-year-old, confessing on live that she had been raped, and you didn't even hear uproar from anyone. It looks so normalized, but it is taken very seriously in these parts of the world. So I think it doesn't really tell badly on Cameroonians, but sometimes they say when one hand touch oil, it rub all the other hands. So we other Cameroonians, we have to be very careful.
Yes. So yeah, thank you for that as well, because I didn't also mention to our audience that you would also have a lot of knowledge when it comes to legal and immigration issues. So certainly when we have related topics, we'd like to have you on board. And last but not the least, this was one of the topics that I raised earlier. A lady, Dr. Amber Ndewa, she's been reunited with her family in Idaho in the United States of America. She came to Cameroon to pursue her studies, and suddenly had an issue with the landlord, who is a diplomat in Cameroon, a Cameroonian diplomat, because of the rent, and they had paid the rent. The videos came out, and they were being accused of they were being accused of defamation. She and her husband. Her husband is a Cameroonian, but having American nationality, they were accused of defamation, and the two of them were actually detained in Yaoundé. But Dr. Amber was released, and her husband stayed in detention. They have children. She fought the legal battle incessantly in Cameroon, struggled, it didn't work out, and the husband is still in detention, and she had to fly back to the United States of America with the children and without the husband, who is still at the Konigi Maximum Prison in Yaoundé. So while Amber and her 3 children are back in the US, like I said, her husband, who is Derogy Ndewa, remains behind bars in Yaoundé. US officials, including the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chair, they've so far publicly demanded for his release and condemned the arrest. So Kingsley would also be telling us what this case actually means, the implications. It's a case of defamation. It has to do with diplomacy, and it also has to do with diaspora politics. What are the implications?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's a very delicate case because one, defamation is generally not a criminal offense in some countries like the USA. It's not a criminal offense in the UK, but it sadly is a criminal offense in Cameroon. It's a criminal offense in Cameroon, but what is curious about this case is the fact that the authorities claim to say they have investigated and they found that the couple did not share that. So that brings us to the question of why is the man still in pretrial detention? Because if you have found that he is not liable for sharing that, then automatically the case falls apart, and we would have expected that the charges would have been dropped and the man released. But he wasn't. So maybe that finding is what led to Amber to be released, to be sent, left to allowed to leave Cameroon, because I think her passport might have been confiscated, but she was allowed to leave. But for me, fundamentally, as a Cameroonian, and I think one of the things that you get from me when you have me on your program, Mimi, is that I call it as it is. I think in Cameroon, we just saw a case of where the law applies unequally to people depending on their backgrounds.
Yeah, because I'm really wondering, why would she be released and then the husband not?
And the simple answer is she is a white American, he's a black. He might be an American, but he's a Cameroonian origin, so he's a black guy. And Cameroonians still live in that colonial mentality where they think that you can treat your own badly, and then because there's pressure coming from the USA, they could let the woman go, and that is it. But what they've just done is show that the law does not apply equally, because the moment they let Amber walk out of Cameroon, automatically their case fell apart. They don't have any grounds to hold Derogy anymore, because they were accused together as husband and wife. And so if you let one of the co-accused to travel, it means that they will never be able to face trial anymore. You cannot now hang on one person and bring that person to trial. So the question now is, why are they holding the person in detention? And you did mention that it's a diplomat. It's good to just be clear that it's actually the Cameroon ambassador to France. So
yes, it's the Cameroon ambassador to France was renting a house to this couple. He came to Cameroon. They were supposed to rent his apartment, and then there was a misunderstanding at the level of they wanted to now move out. They were no longer interested in the house, which is normal. They have not lived there, so you need to just refund the money. And that is where the problem began, because the ambassador has got strings to pull. He's got contacts. He's an official, as he claims, and everybody is an authority in Cameroon. He had to make some calls, and they were arrested. That is what really happened. So I don't think this case has gotten that with MMI. Of course, we've tried at our level to write some articles about it. We even did a live show in French. Our French team did a live show about it, but it's not gotten that attention that it really deserves. So I just wanted to ask, like, when you look at cases like this one, because I'm worried about your husband who is now in detention, you say that there's no case if one person is already out of jail and has even left the country, and he is currently in jail, no case, we are not sure what the future holds. Are you also worried about what the future holds for him, who is currently behind bars now?
Yes, his case just represents a far bigger problem with Cameroon's criminal justice systems. There are no checks and balances. The use of extensive pretrial detention. I followed your coverage at the Geneva Convention or the Cameroon's Review on Torture. And one of the key things that I saw that they kept talking about Cameroon's detention problems, the overcrowded prisons. it all boils down to the fact that a lot of innocent Cameroonians are languishing in jail. They spend way more time in jail than they should for sometimes very petty crimes. Sometimes they're very innocent, just because this system is such that anyone can just decide that you should be remanded in custody. They don't require judges to be able to actually make that decision. And then they don't even come to get extensions. So you can stay there for as long as it takes. And that is what worries me, is that if there's not enough pressure, this man could be in jail for many years. We've seen that happen. And then they just wake up one day and treat it as if they're doing him a favor by releasing him. But it's really worrying to know that if there's no criminal proceeding anymore, because that is one of the problems that they might have now, is they might not call the case to court because they don't have a case. If they haven't found that he's directly responsible for sharing the video, then you don't have a case to build.
And then he just stays behind bars.
But then he's behind bars. So they could just leave him there and just hope that no one talks since the white woman has gone. Maybe no one will talk. But I just don't think that is going to be the case, because I think it would be good if you and other media, MMI and other media, continue to talk about this, and if U.S. authorities continue to put the same pressure to get him released, because I don't think that he should even be in jail for that.
Thank you, Kingsley, for joining us.
Thank you.
And just a recap of our stories that we covered today. Professor Maurice Kamto was in Paris, France this weekend, where he garnered thousands of Cameroonians, and he was having the message of unity, peace, with a lot of lingering questions, and also a criminal arrest raising concerns for diaspora reputation, that is in the US. And still in the US, a partial victory for diplomacy in the Ndewa family case. It has to do with the US and Cameroon. For those who joined this discussion, those who are commenting in the comment section, thank you. Please share so that others can become part of the conversation. This is the beginning of more beautiful, wonderful interviews, analysis, news to come, and we cannot do this alone without you. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.